Hello and welcome to the Baymard World Show, the longest running web design podcast where we look at user experience design, conversion optimization and working in the web. On this week's show, we're going to discuss e-commerce UX best practice with our guest Christian Holst from the Baymard Academy, focusing on practical strategies for improving conversion rates and checkout experiences. My name is Paul Boag, and joining me, as always, is Marcus Lillington. Hello, Marcus. Hello, Christian.
Hi, Paul.
Hi, Paul. Thank you for inviting me. I'm doing quite well now that I'm on your show, finally.
Yeah. Oh, finally. I love that passive-aggressive, why haven't you invited me sooner? No, that's fair enough. Yeah. You look very dapper as well. You look like you've dressed up for the occasion. He's got a jacket on and a shirt. I don't think I can remember the last time I wore a shirt. I'm such a kind of, mess.
We have a huge audience here, so I figured better dress nicely, even if this is audio only. Then
you like make the effort. See, that's the kind of impressive attitude I approve.
Smart looking, smart thinking. That's what it is.
Oh, I like that, Marcus. So on that basis,
I've done my bit.
That's it now. You're done. Yeah. So
on that basis, Christian will be saying smart things and Paul won't. There you go.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's pretty consistent with these podcasts for the last however many years we've been doing them, really, isn't it?
20 years, Paul.
Oh,
21 years next year.
Bloody hell. That's too long to do anything, isn't it, really?
Well, we had a little holiday for a few years.
Yeah, we did.
What have you planned for your anniversary?
We completely missed it. That's just typical. Yeah.
21, we have a 21st birthday. Well, isn't that sort of like the old...
Who celebrates 21st?
I don't know, isn't it supposed to, it's an old-fashioned sort of, you've become of age, don't you?
Oh, yes. No, that's true. Yeah. In certain parts of the world. Hey, we were talking about you last week, Christian, because we were talking about the release of UX Ray 2.0, which is a really useful little tool. I've been playing with it lots. And it just for people who didn't listen to last month's show, first of all, shame on you for not listening to last month's show. And it's basically, am I right in describing it that it's taken the kind of 150,000 hours worth of UX research that underlies the Baymard Institute and is using that to analyze e-commerce sites? Is that a fair summary of it, do you reckon?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair summary. It's basically a tool to provide automated heuristic evaluations or UX audits of websites. So basically, looking across Baymard's catalog of 150,000 hours of research, and then it cannot automatically detect every single UX aspect. That is still for humans to do, but across right now 40 different UX heuristics, it will perform an automatic audit of your website with and that's very important to mention, I think, a 95% accuracy when compared to human experts, which is really the difficult part. It's not that difficult to come up with automated UX or conversion rate optimization suggestions, but if a third of what you come up with is actually harmful to conversions, and it then takes you longer to weed those out, then you've really got nowhere from using such tools. So we really wanted a tool that is basically as good as a very seasoned human UX auditor at conducting an audit, at least across these 40 parameters. So you have something that's very rapid feedback in your projects.
Did you test that against getting other experts to do the same evaluation to compare?
Yeah, we actually, I don't know if we went above, but I think it's very important. So we spent almost $100,000 on just setting up a test structure where we have manually conducted UX audits of 50 different e-commerce sites in a very structured way across, that is actually almost 500 UX parameters. And then we compare it to line by line. How does UX Ray perform across those same parameters? And that's why we know the accuracy rate is 95%.
Wow.
That's actually also just, if you want sort of a glimpse under the hood, just to show how difficult this is. If we accepted a 70% accuracy rate, so 7 out of 10 recommendations would be correct. If we dropped it to that, it could actually assess 80 parameters instead of 40 parameters.
Right.
So that's just to say between 70% accuracy and 95% accuracy, you actually lose half of what you have to say about an e-commerce site. I think that's true for automated tools, but I actually also think it's somewhat true for human conducted audits, that the higher the accuracy you want them, the less coverage you get. And I think it's then probably a reasonable trade-off to go for accuracy, so you don't inadvertently also degrade the user experience or get conversion losses along with your wins, because it's very hard to tell them apart after the fact. When we've probably all tried this, run an A/B split test where you made 10 changes and then you saw less good results than what you hoped, right? And what often happens is you made three conversion killers, or at least severe degradations among those 10 changes, but it can be really difficult to unpick after the fact.
And that's why really you want to kind of avoid making too many changes in one go when you do these tests, because otherwise you don't know what's worked and what doesn't, you know. So very interesting. I see, that's fascinating, because there is, I mean, I'm kind of skipping around a little bit, but we normally talk about an app of the week, and that's why we were talking about UX-Ray last week. And I came across another one this week called Snap. And Snap is basically automated, supposedly, AI-driven, unfacilitated testing. So an AI will pretend to be a user persona and will go around the site and complete tasks and speak out loud, you know, all of that kind of thing. And these kinds of tools have really done my head in, because on one hand, you know, I'm incredibly nervous about them, you know, because they could just be a complete work of fiction, and they could be making up all kinds of shit that don't mean anything whatsoever. And also, I don't like the fact that they remove me from interacting with real users, you know, and I think you don't build up an empathy with an AI persona. You build up empathy with other people. So that puts me off. But on the other hand, obviously, the pragmatic part of me is going, wow, you know, that saves so much organization. It will enable people who never get to do testing, because management always say we don't have time and don't have money, to be able to do this kind of stuff. So I guess at the end of the day, it comes down to the accuracy and the methodology that they've put into you know, to testing whether or not it's accurate, just like you were saying with UX-Ray. So what do you think of tools like this? I'm interested to know your perspective as someone that's gone through this process. Exactly.
To your point, I think there's value and merit to these tools, but I think in the UX community and also in the conversion rate community, I think it's really important that we bring up the accuracy rate question now, before we throw out all the good habits and detailed work processes we built up over the last 10, 15 or 20 years, that we look at accuracy. And I think it's actually quite reasonable that before using any such tool, you would ask them to, you know, document what is your accuracy rate for this tool, because yes, you're giving it either sometimes at a low cost, or sometimes you also see on LinkedIn, type CRO in a DM and I'll send you this magic list that does something. You know, fine, it's there, it's free, not even just a low price. It's fine that the cost is low, but if you actually end up spending longer on going on a wild goose chase, implementing a lot of stuff, both design and code-wise, that aren't going to increase your conversion rate, and then spend even more time on removing the things that actually lowered conversion rate, then you actually haven't saved anything. Then sometimes you've even moved backwards, because your competitors have moved ahead at the same time, where you spend resources on more or less standing still. So I think it's a good time now that it's, I think, clear for all that AI will change the UX industry. There's no doubt about that. But there's still, I think, quite a while until we see it really taking over in a broad sense on actually deliver things that go straight into the final product. So I think it's just reasonable to for any customer or anyone working in this space to ask, what is your documented accuracy rate, and actually also want to see that documentation, because that will tell you how can I use this tool, and also generally when are these tools, you could say at Baymard we internally call it safe for work. When is it actually safe to use this on at least a commercial website? Fine if it's some kind of hobby project website, but for commercial websites, is this a tool that's safe? And how much of a pinch of salt should I take whatever the tool is spitting out with? So I think it's a general thing that I hope we'll see for not just UX and conversion rate tools in the next couple of years, but actually for any AI tool, that they get better at documenting and communicating what is the accuracy of this output, both of the system as a whole in general, but also this particular output that I've given you right now. Yeah. What is the expected confidence or accuracy? I think that's a reasonable way of dealing with it, because we know they will make mistakes from time to time. Knowing how many and how severe is vital to how you can actually apply it to business decisions.
I mean, the one huge advantage that I think you've got in this field, and it's a hard-won advantage, is that 150 hours worth of user research, that you've got such a database behind the scenes of information that you can draw upon. And with AI, it all boils down to, shit in, shit out, basically, for what I'm sure there's a nicer way of putting that. But, and so like the only other similar tools to this that I've used before is there's a tool called Attention Insight, which basically has taken thousands of hours of eye tracking studies, and it can predict to about the same accuracy. Actually, I think it was about 95% accurate where people will look on a page. And that makes sense to me, because you've got a huge data set you can work with. You can compare its predictions against the original data set, and that puts you in a really strong position. And of course, you've got this massive data set. I'm fascinated. I mean, 150,000 hours is a bloody big number, Christian. I mean, tell me a little bit about how that came about. How did the Baymard Institute start? How did it get to where it is?
Talking about anniversaries, in 7 days, it's actually 200,000 hours.
Oh, really?
Wow.
So you can also hear we don't update. It's not a live updating number. It's something we go in and update around every year. Basically, Baymard started, what was it, 15 years ago, thereabout, by now. And I talked to the other co-founder, Jamie. Back then, he was working as a lead front-end developer at a medium-sized agency. And he told me something that I think sometimes even hold true today, that in design decision meetings where they as an agency had prepared 3 different design variations, design variation A, B, or C, and I guess this could have just been as well an internal design department, but when I asked him, so how do you decide which of these versions you actually end up with, he said, well, surprisingly often it actually happens that either someone in the room convinces everyone else that we should go with version B and are really passionate about it. Mm-hmm. And it's usually the designer that designed version B, him or herself. But it's obviously done in a more elegant way, but that is essentially what happens quite often, that someone just convinced the others through plain arguments. Another thing that sometimes happened is if the boss got a little bored and the meeting dragged on and no one could really decide, is that I'm the boss, I'm deciding, let's pick version C. Obviously, hopefully they said it nicer than that, right? Mm-hmm. But that's essentially what happened. Or he was working in an agency, the client said, we're the client and we prefer version A, end of story, right? Rarely someone said, we have data to prove that design version A actually have these 4 mistakes. Design version B is the completely wrong direction and will actually never work. And design version C can work. And the best would actually be a hybrid of C and D if we mix and match in this particular way. And that's not just something we think. We have large scale user experience data based on thousands of test sessions that actually prove that unless you have other more, site specific testing that shows otherwise, this is a better foundation to base this decision on. That rarely happened 15 years ago, almost never happened 15 years ago. And still even today, there are a lot of decisions that are not fully evidence-backed, where it's a little, you could say, too opinionated, at least considering missing out a description in a checkout flow can easily cost you 5% of your conversion rate for the whole site, like 5% abandonment rate extra if you miss something like explaining the phone number, why that is required. That we often see leading to abandonments of that order of magnitude, depending a little on country, right? So when details that are super, super tiny can essentially move millions of dollars on the whole company revenue, we can't let decisions just be based on who argues the best or who favors one particular design version. It needs to be more evidence-based. I then come from a background actually in physical products, but where we also did usability testing, said, hey, we can solve this problem. It will be very slow, it will be very expensive, but we can actually test general user behavior across sites, across demographics. And as long as we're fine with just throwing out all the test data for each of these tested sites individually and only look for patterns across sites, then we can actually uncover what are general user behavior for specific UI components and specific UI patterns. And that's then taken these 15 years and then amassed to these almost 200,000 hours of research by now.
Wow. So how many people are working on this? How many people are analysing the data?
Well, that's obviously evolved over the years. Currently at Baymard, we're 60, and it is around 35 that are working full-time only on either conducting new research or maintaining the existing research. Yeah. So it's more than half of the companies, around 35 full-time.
I didn't know whether it was kind of like, are we looking at 5 very, people that are locked in a bunker under the ground, or is this 1,000 people? I just can't get my head around it.
35 people locked in a bunker under the ground. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that just blows my mind because that's a big undertaking. You must have been, to a degree, and this is no criticism, I think it was needed, but you must have been fairly naive starting out at the size of the challenge you were undertaking. Is that a fair comment? Because I think I would just look at that and go, no, that's...
Well, we've been talking for years that we need to make evidence-based design decisions, but we do that by running a short survey, talking to stakeholders, talking to users, and kind of getting a general impression. We don't get the proper, serious data.
This kind of
because
stuff,
it's madness doing that, surely.
Yeah, it's just crazy. He's got something either slightly insane about you, or slightly autistic, or slightly naive. And I don't know which one of those it is, but it's impressive.
Yes, very impressive.
It could be a little bit of each. No, but I mean, we also started out just focusing on one thing, and that is checkout flows. And also, I think we in the beginning, Baymard was only about checkout flows, and it wasn't actually clear to us we would ever move beyond it. So at the time, the task was also probably 6 times smaller than it is today. Right. But actually, now that you bring up what research do we conduct, it's also a little, I think, important to underscore. The point of what we're doing is not to replace your own internal testing. You should always do a lot of your own data collection and also own usability testing. The point of making a large database of user behavior and best practices that are actually test-based on what UI patterns works is to say, well, when you do a redesign, you have maybe, we call them micro decisions. You have to do maybe 100 micro decisions when you're redesigning a product page. And you can't run your own internal test for every single of those.
No.
Not even Fortune 500 companies can do that, because we sometimes work with them and they have the money to do it, but they don't have the time. They wouldn't wait, even if they could even if they do actually have a budget, they wouldn't wait that long for results if you were to test each of those 100 micro decisions individually. So what happens often is you collect research on the 2 or 3 big things, and you should still do that, especially things that are site-specific or unique to your brand or a particular UI that's very unique to your customer demographic or something like that. But all the generic stuff, how should we design an expand and collapse feature?
Yeah.
How should we design the quantity field? How should the interactions around adding a higher quantity or reducing the quantity work? What should actually happen if users try to type quantity 0? How should the phone field be designed in a checkout flow? All of these are extremely standardized UI components, and users have extremely generic and standardized behavior around them. They just expect them to work in certain ways.
Yeah.
And that you should not squander your internal test resources on testing things that are completely generic, both from a user behavior point of perspective, but also from a design perspective. And that's where a ready-made research catalog such as ours come in. You remove 97 of the micro decisions and can rely on pre-made research and get really fast, really detailed and accurate answers. And then you have freed up your internal resources to focus on what are the 3 or 4 things that are super unique or important to your brand and customer demographics, or whatever it is you want to focus those resources on.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it almost feels more like, I know this sounds ridiculous because it's a repository of user research, but it almost feels more like a design tool than a user research tool, in the sense that it's the kind of thing I would use when I'm doing the design, right? In order to, instead of thinking, what should I do with this filter? I'll just go and look up what I should do with this filter. And then you still do your testing afterwards to just validate whether it's worked in your specific combination, in your specific circumstances and that kind of stuff. So that's certainly how I've been using it. I haven't been using it as a tool as a way of convincing stakeholders just to agree to whatever I've done. I've never done that, but it is very useful for doing that. It's really good. You can say, look, Baymard say I should have done it this way, and they've got loads of research. So, but don't use it in that way. That's not the way to use it. But do.
but that's a different discipline, Paul, right? It's just that is communicating design decisions. But the design decisions need to be sound and research backed in the first place. Then it's true. It's still very efficient to go into a room and say, this is research backed, fine, but the management didn't really listen. But say, oh, we can get ahead of the direct competitors here, and here they're in front of us. Shouldn't we catch up? Is then very, very efficient in terms of securing budget. Yeah. That's just the truth. And that's also why we have so many best and worst practice examples supplementing our guidelines. We decided that's an important thing to spend resources on. That's a reality of how you secure decisions and budgets in organizations. But of course, the new design or new decision that you suggest should also be research backed in the first place. But unfortunately, that's not always what management responds the very best to, compared to just using the competitor trick. Yeah.
Top tip for listeners that are too tight to pay for Baymard, which I entirely understand. They have a Figma plugin that will basically allow you to annotate your design with these little cards that gives the kind of, it doesn't go into depth.
If you don't do this, the business will go under.
Yeah, basically, that's what it says for every element on the screen. And it's such a great, little starting point and entry point in justifying your design decisions. And I love the fact that you've given that away for free. That's very cool. I like, and I know that obviously if you've got a Baymard account, you can click through and go to all the details and stuff like that. But it's a nice little tool.
Sorry, one more thing.
Go on,
one more thing. I just want to go. It's
you
just
can't get a
something
word in edgeways. I'm getting overexcited.
No, that's fine. But I'm going all the way back to UX Ray and what you were saying about you. It uses 40 different heuristics. It's measured. It uses those 40 different heuristics to give you the results it gives. But you originally had 80, potentially more. What I just certainly don't want to go into the detail of each one of those 40 that you didn't use. I'm just interested to know, what's the kind of heuristic that is unreliable? What can you give us an example of that? You even said that humans aren't so great at some of these measurements as well.
That's a good question.
Thank you, Paul.
Yeah. So the 40 that we didn't go ahead and publish were discarded solely because we couldn't document an accuracy rate above 95%. Yep. So that was sort of the requirement. It's not like they had a particular characteristic. Then, of course, we've dived deeper into understanding. So why didn't they get a 95% accuracy rate? And there are many different reasons, but and it's a bit specific for each of them. But what's really difficult with some of this, and this is also just why it's so important to not just document accuracy rate, but actually also publish the results, is if you test something across, or when we test something across 10 or 15 sites even, but they're all fairly similar in structure, then it's very easy to get a high accuracy rate. But as soon as you start to add sites, which we have done here, from different countries, so we have a couple of Swedish and Polish sites mixed into that 45 accuracy batch there, then you're starting to see design patterns that are specific to a certain country. And that is typically where the automated systems are completely tripped up. So for instance, just to give you one example of what it looks like when these AI systems are tripped up, there was a Polish e-commerce site, and one of the things we look for, how are breadcrumbs structured? Sure. And one of the things that it then looks for is how do breadcrumbs look? And breadcrumbs are, small pieces of text placed somewhere near the header, and then oftentimes they have a forward-pointing text arrow.
Yeah.
And on one of these Polish sites, they used a site-wide banner placed above the main navigation, and that site-wide banner, it was for some kind of offer, had a series of texts with short single character words with a text arrow between them. And the system then wrongly mistook that for being the breadcrumbs.
Oh, I see.
But it was just a weird-looking ad banner.
Right.
So most of the inaccuracies we're getting is in identifying the wrong components in UX-Ray. And that is because the actual evaluation of the site, we're going a little deep in the engine room here, the actual evaluation of a site, there we are actually not relying very much on any kind of AI or automated tool. There we actually instead relying on a different tool we have spent almost eight years building, which is a manual heuristic evaluation tool meant to increase the accuracy rate for human UX experts, because we need that for our audit team. So that's a tool we spent 8 years building, where we can get a really high accuracy rate, inter-rater reliability, it's called, among human experts when they rate. And we've done that by basically taking the 500 guidelines we have and then breaking that into largely 8,000 different, very, very, very specific UI components. So the UX auditor have to say, what UI component am I looking at right now? Instead of evaluating, is that good or bad? Then the system, and that's something we have then manually mapped up, then the system will tell you for this particular UI component out of this database of 8,000, this is the evaluation output. So that's actually a manual mapping we've spent 8 years doing.
Wow.
And the AI is therefore not involved in that. So most of our accuracy problems is around actually detecting components right, and then mistakenly thinking, in this instance, a banner ad is actually a breadcrumb.
Wow.
That helps me a lot. Yeah, the differences between languages and cultures are really hard to measure automatically.
Marcus, you just want to know that you're not going to be replaced by AI too soon.
I don't care anymore. Don't care. Yeah, it's like,
you're not quite at retirement yet. You've got a few years to go.
Yeah, I know. But I've accepted that if it happens next week, it happens.
I don't think it'll happen next week. You're all right. No. You're okay for a while longer. Anyway, let's talk more broadly about e-commerce, because, I mean, obviously, with 15 years and pushing 200,000 hours of research, you must have learnt a few lessons along the road. And I think it would be really cool to kind of unpick some of those for people. And I almost feel like this is such a generic question that it could take a whole podcast in itself. But, you know, the subject of what are the biggest of all the things that you see go wrong on e-commerce sites, what do you think kills conversion the most out of everything?
Yeah, it is a little broad.
Yeah,
question.
sorry.
I mean,
pick something that springs to mind.
Yeah, for sure I will. For sure will. I mean, obviously it depends what your exact conversion killer is on your current site. Will be a little site specific.
Yeah.
So if I'm not to provide a generic answer, then there are some concrete things that we often see sites fail at that are surprisingly easy to fix, and they're simply things that are not prioritized in general, because we've spotted them now consistently for 10 plus years.
Yeah.
There's a lot of quick wins, for instance, in the checkout flow. That's one of the easier ones, also because it's quite universal for most industries and countries. But there are small things. So in countries where you have a order review step, where users are reviewing the whole order and then are to press a button called place order, there you can fall in a really, really dangerous trap. And that is what we see quite consistently in testing, is that the order review step and the order confirmation step, they look very, very much alike in the mind of a user, right?
Right.
It's a textual page. It happened after I typed my credit card data, and then I typed the button, and then I'm seeing a new page.
Yeah.
At this page, there is a summary of all the information I typed. What we see in testing is that not all users, but some users will actually misinterpret order review steps for a confirmation step. That is a critical error, because what will this user do?
Yeah.
They will
finished.
exit the page thinking they have completed the order. And now you have made the worst type of checkout abandonment that can actually happen. And that is an abandonment that the user didn't even want to. They actually don't even know that it occurred.
Yeah.
So a very, very simple trick you can do is, if you have an order confirmation step, take the place order button that you would usually have at the bottom of the page and copy it so you have two. So there's also one at the top of the page.
Yeah.
It's a simple trick. We had one audit client that did this, they got a $10 million return on investment on this one, just duplicating that button. Again, this won't happen for 10% of your users.
Yeah.
But if it happens for 1 out of 200 users, that is actually 0.5% of all your site revenue you have lost, because all users need to go through your checkout flow. It can be quite huge. So that's one thing.
That's a really good example.
Another thing in checkout flows is, and I think this is actually one of the least sexy but most important topics.
Why is that always the case? Why is it always the least sexy stuff that has the biggest difference? Makes the biggest difference. Go on.
The general error recovery experience in checkout flows is still, it have improved in the 15 years we've been doing this, but it's still way too poor. There's a lot of revenue you can unlock there. So something that's very, very basic is, when an error actually happens, like a validation error somewhere on the checkout step, what we see some users struggle with is to understand, after I click the primary CTA on this checkout step, an error have actually occurred. That's why I'm seeing the page again.
Yeah.
B, understanding where the error is and how to resolve it. And even the first two steps, not even how to resolve it, just understanding an error happened and where is it, is something we see surprisingly many users struggle with. So a good best practice there is, obviously you need to provide markup, visual styling for each of the fields that are wrong on the page. But what you need to do in addition to that is, you need to also have a description at the very top of the page that outlines all of the errors on the page. And then lastly, what you need to do is that you need to have a conditional logic. If there's only one error on the page, scroll them right to the field.
Yeah.
But if there are, more and more sites are getting that right. In the old days they weren't, but more and more sites are getting this part right. What they're not getting right is, if there are multiple errors on the page, then you need to go to the top where users can see the overview, so they understand there are multiple errors on the page. You will get significant checkout abandonments if you don't do this latter thing. And the thing is, users see one, if there's a mistake in two fields, one field here low on the page and another high on the page, and you scroll them only to the one low on the page, straight to that, they will fix that, resubmit the page.
And then get frustrated.
What happens? Now they're frustrated, they can't see what's happened, they've resubmitted a second time. What we actually sometimes see in testing is that users then conclude the page is broken, there's a bug or something is off. And then again, deeming, well, there's a technical issue on this page, I can't complete my order because I just fixed the mistake they told me to fix, and I'm still at this page. When we survey people in thousands, 6% of all customers say in the past quarter they have abandoned a checkout flow due to technical errors and bugs. I don't believe that there have actually occurred technical errors on any of these pages, but there are things where if users get completely stuck, the language they will use is actually they're perceiving, oh, the page is broken.
Yeah.
No, it's just an extremely complicated page to use, but technically it is working. But that's beyond the point here. They cannot complete your checkout flow. So things like that, the error recovery experience is it's hugely important. Another thing in error recovery experience now that
go on, keep going.
Slightly
This is
unsexy
good.
topic is
This is great.
then the last part. So now the user have discovered there's one or in some cases multiple errors on the page, and inline validation is not enough. You still need to have that error message clear at the top. Is then how do you communicate or how do you help resolve the error or help the user recover from the error? And there we see a design pattern that is very overlooked, which is adaptive error messages, we call it.
Okay.
So that is basically, instead of saying phone field is wrong or invalid phone number, you need a specific backend rule or a live validation rule was triggered. So your technical system know exactly why this input is wrong. You need to tell the user that.
Yeah.
So if the phone number is wrong because you included a special character, which some users will do if they type their country code first, plus 45 would be the Danish country code, then they've typed the special characters. If that's a validation rule that was triggered, tell the user.
Yeah.
Don't say phone number is wrong. Special characters cannot be used. And if it's for phone number field, you might even want to be nicer and say you don't need to include the country code at all. Because that would be typically the reason why you have special characters. Or the phone number field is too long or too short.
Or
tell
even,
them whatever it is so they can recover faster.
In some ways, it shouldn't matter. You should be able. Postcodes are the big one in the UK. That some people put space halfway through their postcodes and some don't. And it's like, and also sometimes it's people write it all uppercase. Sometimes it's upper and lowercase. Especially on mobile, it'll go into lowercase. And it's like, why isn't this fixed in the back end? Right? Why isn't there something that's just going through that and tidying it up, getting it in the format you want it in the database and dropping it in? So really, there shouldn't even be a validation error being thrown there. But yes, an adaptive error message is definitely preferable to not doing anything at all. I think what really strikes me over this, and I got hit by this recently where I've got an article coming out on Tuesday, which actually heavily uses a lot of your guides from Baymard. And as I was sitting and writing that, what really struck me was that I know all of these things, right? They're all common sense things. But when you're dealing with an entire e-commerce site, there are so many of these things. There's so many little things. It's like death by 1,000 cuts, right? It's not that one of these things is going to wreck your conversion rate, but together, collectively, they cause this real problem. And so when I'm working, I'm just starting a retainer, actually a 6-month retainer, doing conversion rate optimization on a big fashion brand, and going through and picking out all of these little things and prioritizing them and working out how to identify them. I totally understand, I guess is what I'm saying, why e-commerce sites end up in a bit of a mess, because you can't plan for all of these things up front. You are going to miss them. And that's why post-launch optimization is so crucial, because there will be things that need improving over years in many cases. So yeah, I totally, it's a big job.
Yeah, it's a lot of ongoing work, and oftentimes you, as you say, inadvertently you introduce regressions as well. You make a large whole page redesign, and sure, 4 of the things improved, but the user review section on the PDP actually degraded. Before you discover that and fix it, that's a new project on its own. So, and plus the new design patterns emerge, user behavior also evolve, although slowly it do evolve. So it's really an ongoing thing to check for these endless amount of micro decisions you have to make and make sure that they're all good. Yeah.
So talking of which, what has evolved? What have you seen change over the 15? Over that 15 years, mobile must have come in. I'm trying to think now. So that would have been a big change. But what other kind of big shifts have you seen or are you seeing now,
A lot of things are actually improving. So that's
good.
The good news,
Yeah.
is that the last 5 years, quite intense focus on UX have actually paid off. We can see that because we benchmark around 200 very large brands annually across 500 parameters. And we've been doing that for 10 plus years now. And we can see the average performance is actually improving on most parameters. Then user requirements are also increasing, and sometimes at an even higher pace. So sometimes when we look at it now, we feel, we're still behind. Well, user requirements have also increased greatly in those same 10 years. So I would say that there's generally a lot of improvements, but one area where we are seeing improvements is around product data and product imagery.
Right, okay.
It took most sites a long time to figure out that a very crucial part of the user experience you get on the web page is surprisingly actually the content on the PDP, but also the structured data to some extent. So something like having good, high quality images from a high number of angles, having detailed videos, or really describing what goes on visually is hugely important. What we actually see when testing, when users land on a product details page, what we see, and I don't recall if it's 90 or 95% of what users do as a first action, is look at the image. But they also do it for things where it's an obviously bad idea. If trying to figure out, does this speaker have the right type of connection that I'm looking for?
Yeah.
Then instead of going to the specification sheet or product description, they go straight for the images, looking for that images that show the speaker from the back so they can see if the connection match.
Yeah, I would do that.
And if they can't see it, then they conclude, it doesn't have the connection, abandon that product, right? Just to say that users are extremely visually driven, even try to use images to solve problems or tasks where they shouldn't. It's a poor, product finding strategy. It's much better to actually look for the hardcore fact than trying to decipher something from an image.
But
where
it's hard work reading copy.
Completely agree. I understand why users, go to that gut reaction. But just saying that users are extremely centered. So around images. So that's one thing that we have seen generally improve. That sites have, I think, sufficient data to understand that you need really good imagery, and if you can't get it from your suppliers, then you need to take it on and do yourself. At least for your top 1,000 best-selling products, and then rely on vendor photography for the rest.
Yeah.
But that's one thing we've seen improve.
Yeah, well, that's good. What do you think about talking of the future and what's coming on? Obviously, we're seeing AI, the companies like OpenAI, attempt to shift the e-commerce experience away from the website into a chat agent, and more they're offering the ability to buy directly, or they've got agents that supposedly can buy things for you. Although I've seen some hilarious examples. There was one guy who tested an agent and asked it to buy toilet roll, and it went to every different type of toilet roll on the entire site and added one of every type of toilet roll. And he had to stop it at about 700 brands of toilet roll. But, I mean, setting aside those silly examples and presuming that things will get better, I mean, what's your thoughts on it? You must think about this kind of thing because, obviously that is a big factor in AI. Where do you think that will go?
And how will you test it?
Yeah.
So, this is it's really an exciting new space. I think it's still a bit out seeing users shift in large volumes towards this, but there are select use cases because I don't know if you recall, but when all the voice applications came out some 5 or 6 years ago, we said the same thing. You would order everything with your voice. And I think even back then people said, visual websites are dead. People in the future, people will just talk to websites in their computer. And, that didn't really happen. And this is there are some similarities this time around.
Yeah.
I think it's not the same this time around, but there are some similarities. It will not go as fast as people think, at least not for all purchases. There's still a lot of purchases where users will want to be in control. Sure, there are some commodity items, some household staples that you just want restocked when they run out.
Yeah.
And that's also why we have all these things, buy on subscription.
Yeah.
It's the same type of products that you today would just buy on a restocking subscriptions. Those are very well suited for just have the AI buy it.
Yeah.
But I think where it's already changing massively is not actually in a complete purchase, but it is in the research and product discovery and product decision phase. Which new digital camera should I buy? Which one is the best one for my requirements?
Yeah.
But that have always, and here people have to remember that this have always been an off-site experience. There are very few users, if they want to make you could say more elaborate purchase, that only visit a single e-commerce site and do all the product exploration on that page. They typically have multiple e-commerce sites, review sites, blogs, social media open, depending a bit on whether it's a fashion product or a more technical product. And then they do their research. And this part is changing massively already with AI, relying much more on that to provide either the initial research to winnow down the millions of products to a few brands or product types, or the more detailed one where they compare 2 or 3 particular products they already found, comparing them head to head. So here, that's changing. But from there, and just making that choose a camera of the 3 that I had in mind and just auto buy it, that it will take, I think, quite a while before users are that confident. But it will speed up a lot of these processes. There's no doubt about that.
The way that I tend to think about it is that, although technology moves very fast, people don't. Our habits change very slowly, and so we're certainly not at a point where you could trust an AI agent to do that. But let's presume that we reach a point where you can trust an AI agent to do that kind of thing. There's still going to be a long period of time where people aren't yet trusting it, even though it is trustworthy. And on top of that, I think it might almost be a generational thing. I think people of our kind of age may never fully trust an AI, may always want to double check. And it will be the next generation that are growing up with, that have grown up with competent AIs that will probably, their habits will change. So, I mean, that's the way I'm looking at it at the moment. Whether or not I'm right, who knows? People surprise you. I just think that a lot of the, AI has been adopted faster than ever before is a little bit misleading, because all those stats are based on, people have tried once, but are they willing to trust buying a car with it? There's a huge leap there, isn't there?
There are select use cases where it will be adopted quite fast and quite widespread, but a complete replacement for the web as we know it today, I think that's still very far out if it will ever happen, including the shopping aspect. It will have assisting roles, but it will not replace it.
Yeah.
We're talking to a client at the moment about this exact subject, and how are people researching what they provide, and that's the changed point, isn't it? Because what AI gives you is the ability to ask a question in a kind of natural language way, where that it's going to go off and look at 10, 100 different things that you just would never, you probably don't even know exist. And that's where it provides the value. And I think if we can kind of keep looking at AI as this thing that is an enabler in that area rather than this magic tool, I think that's where the value is. But I'm interested to know how, or at the moment, you've got your 35 to 60 people testing checkouts. How do you check out people buying things via AI? That's much more complicated, or maybe I'm just not clever enough to get my head around it.
So the way we do the bulk of our testing is that it is moderated usability test sessions, and then we just look at run a lot of test sessions across a lot of different sites and look only for UI and behavioral patterns across sites.
Sure.
So that
so you
part
wouldn't look
I'm
at
not too concerned about.
Yeah, so you wouldn't be looking
how
at
you'd
the
get there in the
research
first place.
phase. You would only be looking at the on-site phase. Is that fair to say?
No, we also look at the research phase.
Oh,
But
interesting.
we would obviously need to recruit with users here. It's the off-site research phase. How do you generally go about looking for apparel versus electronics versus
Right.
automotive parts or whatever?
So you have seen an uptake in AI adoption at that stage of people saying, where they were used to say, I would search on Google or I would, they're now turning to AI. Is that something you're seeing?
It's not something we've tested that in depth that I can
fair enough.
testify to what percentage of users have switched towards it. But I think some of it will just happen organically, right?
Of course.
In the Google search results now, in the old days, they would search for a web page, and now they will get that AI summary at the top of the results page.
Yep.
So is that an AI-assisted product search? If I search for the best vacation camera that need to be used for underwater something, and the AI summary of the search results then provide me a starting point, was that AI directed or guided? So I think, the way to view AI is a better analogy is perhaps saying this is the invention of electricity.
Yeah.
It's closer to that. I don't personally use electricity for something that as an output, but I use it for a lot of other machines and gadgets to work.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's the same thing with AI. It is an underlying sort of similar to electricity, an underlying utility commodity that then powers a lot of useful tools.
Yeah.
That's, I think, where we'll get a lot of gains, at least in the next handful of years, is if we consider that and not as the end product in it by itself.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So I've got one last question because we're running out of time. But it was when we were talking about AI and trusting AI, it made me think about how important the subject of trust is on an e-commerce site or on any site where you're selling a product or a service or anything like that. And I'm just interested. Obviously, the kind of lazy approach is, we just shove a load of social proof on the site, right? Here's an award we won, here's a testimonial, that kind of thing. But I'm wondering whether there are any other ways of building trust on e-commerce sites in particular. So I'm thinking about things like return policies and that kind of stuff. What have you learnt around that? I'm just curious.
Yeah, you're already touching on one of the on a few of the important aspects here, but obviously social proof is a big one.
Yeah,
both on page but also off page social proof. Because if people are actually in doubt whether they trust you, then they will not trust your version of whether they should trust you or not. Then they will go to offsite reviews.
Yeah.
And small things there, like even responding to the negative reviews, is something you should do quite consistently, because that can at least help explain or set context. We actually see this quite consistently. Also, when users look for products, they seek out the negative reviews often more than they seek out the positive reviews, just to do due diligence. They understand not everyone are having a perfect experience and not every product is perfect for every user. But understanding, are these shortcomings something that's relevant for me, is critical.
Yeah.
So responding to negative reviews is a good way of handling the off-site social proof, the negative one that you are getting, beyond obviously everything you can do to bolster the positive one. But things like having clear return and generous return policies is also something that can help increase or build trust. Another thing is the whole design, having a well-worked design without a lot of complications is also something that builds trust and credibility. And also something that basically doesn't look too dated. Yes. Sometimes we come across a site, you're thinking, is this made in the 90s? This is actually a measurable effect, the aesthetic usability effect, that if something looks too old, it will also degrade trust. That's also a parameter. But simply, is a site too complicated to use? Can also lead some users to conclude, is this too unprofessional? But all of this depends quite a bit on, do they know the brand, or is this from a known brand or a large brand?
Yeah.
It changes a lot if it's from a much smaller, completely unknown site, and it's new users.
Yeah. That kind of halo effect they talk about in psychology, that, you know, the fact that we tend to trust more attractive people, even though there's no direct correlation between attractiveness and trustworthiness. And it's the same with websites. If a website is overly complicated, is unprofessional, is dated, then it makes us doubt the quality of the product or service that you're going to get from that. So yeah, I completely see where you're coming from.
Hallelujah. Basically.
What's that?
Hallelujah.
Yeah, well, yeah.
People pay agencies to design their websites in a good way.
You would be out of a job, wouldn't you, if the halo effect didn't exist? So, yeah, I mean, I could go on forever. This is such a massive subject, and we've touched on 2 or 3 of the questions that I gave you in advance and not managed to touch any of the rest, but such a really great conversation. Yes. I would encourage people to go and check out Baymard Institute. I would encourage you to check out their UX Ray. And if you're not in a position to sign up to Baymard, definitely check out that Figma plugin because that's really cool. I'll include all of that in the show notes, along with that Snap app that I mentioned, you know, that you could check out for yourself and make your own decision over that. And you can get to all of that by going to boag.world/028. And that will take you through to everything that we've talked about today. Marcus. Oh, Christian, I'm sorry about this. I don't know whether you've listened to the podcast before, but we have this unfortunate thing where Marcus has to tell a terrible joke at the end.
People threaten us if I don't do this.
We've tried to stop. Well, I've tried to stop it.
Anyway, here we go. So here's this month's joke. My dad suggested I register for a donor card. He's a man after my own heart.
Actually, I quite like that one. That's quite good. I'll allow that. You can keep that one. You don't have to edit it out. Hey, Christian, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll talk to everybody again soon. Bye.